this kid, Bijan Robinson, is really, really talented and can change the fortune of an NFL team just by him being picked.
When was Dak Prescott his best? When Zeke was the best running back in football?
I believe the Dallas Cowboys are one key player away from being a legit Super Bowl contender in 2023, and I believe they should go all in to secure that player Thursday night at the NFL Draft. But first, how did the Cowboys even get into this situation where they're one of the better teams in the league that has a chance to compete for a Super Bowl? Well, the Cowboys had a pretty good season a year ago, finishing 12-5, second in the NFC East, and again making the playoffs, winning the wild card game, and sending the GOAT Tom Brady into retirement. But much like the recent years for the Dallas Cowboys, they ran out of gas in the divisional round of the playoffs against the San Francisco 49ers, losing 19-12 in the game. And I think that night showed us what really needed to change for the Cowboys to become an elite team, and it wasn't on the defensive side of the ball, as that was a pretty solid unit throughout the entirety of the season. It was the offense that once again struggled to put up points in a playoff game, and it became very apparent that it needed some new reinforcements. There was a problem though, and it was that the Cowboys didn't really have a ton of money to drastically improve their team. They had just paid Dak Prescott a couple seasons ago, so he was under the salary cap for a large number. They had to trade away Amari Cooper because his contract number was too big as well to the Cleveland Browns. But what was really handicapping the team was Ezekiel Elliott, who signed a 6-year, $90 million deal just in 2019. And I want to be fair to Ezekiel Elliott for a moment. He did perform well enough in his rookie contract to earn himself a second deal. As soon as he got drafted in 2016, he was one of the best backs in the league. He rushed for 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns as a 21-year-old. And there's no doubt that he stayed one of the best backs in the league all the way through 2019 when he did sign that contract. But much like we've seen from running backs in recent memory, he fell off after his 4th season. He had already over 1,000 carries as a running back in the National Football League. And the Cowboys, in my opinion, gave him that contract solely based off of his production in the first few years of his career, and they didn't really take into account the potential fall off of him as he approached the mid-20s. And because of that, his contract the last couple of years has been probably one of the worst in the entire NFL for his value and his production. But the Cowboys did partially make up for signing Zeke to that contract in the 2019 NFL Draft when they drafted Tony Pollard in the 4th round. Pollard came in with not a ton of expectations, but he really was the lightning to Zeke's thunder in the first few years. Zeke still got a majority of the carries, but when he got tired, Tony Pollard would come in and actually be very effective. But he really wouldn't take away Zeke's carries or his role in the offense until the 2021 season. When Zeke's fall off really became apparent, his explosiveness was just not the same anymore, and the Cowboys decided to use him as a short yardage back, also a goal line back, and really use Tony Pollard as the change of pace guy, use him out of the backfield a little bit more, throwing passes to him. And that's really when I started seeing people argue for the first time that, hey, maybe Zeke's time in Dallas is coming to an end. But I think officially this year the writing was on the wall even more. Zeke even looked further from his young self, and Tony Pollard really excelled this year. He rushed over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career and also had 9 touchdowns on the ground. And even when you just watched the two running backs play, it was just clear as day that Tony Pollard was much better than Zeke at this stage of their careers. So I think most people did realize that Zeke's time in Dallas was coming to an end rapidly, and Tony Pollard was going to be the future running back. But Tony Pollard's long-term plans with the Cowboys got a little bit ruined when he suffered a broken leg in the playoff game against the 49ers. Outside of CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard's really the only other viable weapon for that offense last year, and I think him going out pretty early in that game definitely costed them a chance at potentially winning that. But luckily for the Cowboys, they had Ezekiel Elliott on the bench. He came in and produced 26 total yards in the game for the Cowboys. Yeah, not great. And the Cowboys ended up cutting him a couple months later, saving over $16 million against their cap, while also sending one of their more popular players in franchise history to the open market. The Cowboys also placed the franchise tag on Tony Pollard. I think he is going to play on that this year. It's kind of a prove-it deal for him off of a broken leg. I'm still curious if the Cowboys would have gotten a long-term deal done with Tony Pollard if he had not gotten hurt. I wonder what that contract would have looked like and if they would have actually committed to him for multiple years outside of just this season. But nonetheless, Tony Pollard will be back next year, and he's expected to be the running back one for the Cowboys. But getting rid of Ezekiel Elliott and signing Tony Pollard to the franchise tag are not the only moves that the Cowboys made this offseason, especially not on the offensive side of the ball. The Cowboys also went out and got a former Pro Bowl wide receiver in Brandon Cooks from the Houston Texans for a 5th-round pick in 2023 and a 6th-round pick in 2024. At the time, this was seen as one of the biggest steals of the offseason for the Cowboys, as they had gotten one of the best deep threats in football to pair along with CeeDee Lamb. But they were not done getting very solid veteran players, as they traded for Stephon Gilmore from the Indianapolis Colts for a another 5th round pick. So they got a much needed upgrade at wide receiver 2 to pair along CeeDee Lamb and also be able to put Michael Gallup in the slot, use him as their wide receiver 3. And the cornerback opposite of Trayvon Diggs for the Cowboys last year, whether that was Jordan Lewis or Deron Bland, really struggled last season. So getting Stephon Gilmore to fill in there as well is another huge upgrade for that defense, which was already one of the best in football. And for the most part, their coaching staff stayed the same, except for Kellen Moore, who was not brought back to be their offensive coordinator. And personally, I was not a big fan of this move whatsoever. I thought for the most part, Kellen Moore was a pretty good offensive coordinator, and I would definitely take him calling plays over Mike McCarthy, who's going to be the one calling plays now. But McCarthy threw a ton of shade on Kellen Moore during his NFL Combine interview, saying, "I've been where Kellen has been. Kellen wants to light the scoreboard up, but I want to run the damn football so I can rest my defense. I don't desire to be the #1 offense in the league." So McCarthy's talking a pretty big game. I'm definitely going to keep a close eye on him this year and see how he's calling up plays and how his offense is performing. He was pretty good in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, but once again, how hard is it to really be an offensive coordinator for a Hall of Fame quarterback? So we'll see what McCarthy can do this year. Maybe he'll shock a lot of people, including me. But what really caught my eye was Mike McCarthy saying he wants to run the ball a lot more this upcoming season. And then it got me thinking about Ezekiel Elliott as a young player and then Dak Prescott as a young player, both of them coming into the league at the same time, both coming in the 2016 NFL draft. And when you go back and watch those teams and also look at the numbers between Zeke and Dak, I think those were the most effective and efficient offenses that the Cowboys have had in recent memory. Dak was super efficient. He took care of the ball and also had some of his best seasons the first 4 years of his career. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think Dak is at his best when he can rely on a running game, run play action off of it, be able to keep defenses guessing. I think that's what really helped Dak play some of his best football early in his career. But as Ezekiel Elliott has fallen off more and more and more, the Cowboys haven't been able to incorporate that into their offense as much. And I think that's a big reason why we've seen Dak Prescott fall off a little bit, especially this past season. So is getting a new play caller and getting a new wide receiver 2 really the solution to getting Dak back to playing effective and efficient football? My answer to that question is no, and I think they're going to need one of the best rushing attacks in the league for that to happen. So why not go into the draft and get a potential generational running back prospect in Bijan Robinson to bolster up that rushing attack? We saw how good Ezekiel Elliott was as soon as he stepped foot into the NFL, and I think that Bijan Robinson can have very similar success. I've seen so many Saquon Barkley comparisons for Bijan Robinson in the draft process, and honestly, I can get on board with that. Robinson is all around just a great running back prospect. I don't think he has the overall speed as Saquon does, but he does have the agility, he does have the vision, and he does have the crazy elusiveness. And on top of that, he can also be a receiver out of the backfield. He can line up in the slot. We've seen it at Texas, him line up against linebackers or safeties and just absolutely tear them up. He's going to be a fantastic weapon for whatever team drafts him, and I'm begging the Cowboys to do this if they do want to make a Super Bowl run. Stephen Jones, the son of Jerry Jones, was asked about Bijan Robinson, and he said, "I'm sure when that first day is over, he's certainly going to have a team, and you never know." Practically leaving the door wide open for the Cowboys to potentially go and acquire him. Now, I don't see Bijan Robinson falling to the number 26 overall pick, so I think the Cowboys are going to have to trade up to get him, but I definitely think it's going to be worth it for them in their offense. So if he falls outside of the top 10, which many people are starting to believe that he will, trade a couple second-round picks, trade a second this year, a third next year, move up into the teens and snag one of the most dynamic running backs that we've seen in a long time. But now that Bijan to the Cowboys has picked up steam a little bit, I think more talking heads are beginning to talk about it. Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk said, "I think the Cowboys, if they get him, would fall into that category as a Super Bowl contender. It would be very fascinating to see how high the Cowboys would go and what they would give up to try and get him, because to the extent that they have to try and win a Super Bowl, that's the only guy I can see making the biggest difference for them right away. You have all the pieces that you need on defense. You have a wide receiver 2 now on the other side of CeeDee Lamb. Your offensive line is still pretty solid. You have a quarterback in Dak Prescott. I think the Cowboys can afford to go best player available, and you have to go with a guy that will completely change the complexion of your offense, and that is Bijan Robinson. I know the Cowboys may have some other small needs here and there. Maybe they want to completely fix up their offensive line, or maybe go after a tight end since they lost Dalton Schultz. But if the Cowboys are really serious about being able to win a Super Bowl in the next couple of seasons, they have to go out and make this move. There's no other offensive player in the draft that is going to move the needle this much. So that's my case. If the Cowboys really want to win a Super Bowl, they're going to go out and get Bijan Robinson, and that will make him one of the scariest teams in the entire NFL. So if you're watching this, Jerry Jones, if you're watching this, Stephen Jones, the ball is in your court. Make the right play and become a powerhouse in the super weak NFC. But let me know if you would trade up for Bijan Robinson if you were the Cowboys, or if you would stay with their pick and probably draft a tight end or another position of need. Also, if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. And as always, thank you so much for watching the video, and I will catch you guys in my next one.